Well, good morning, Lydia. How's it going?
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Doing awesome. Thanks for
I'm out on
joining
the
me.
road again.
Yes, in your car again.
In my car again, but that's okay. That's okay.
Life in the business. Yeah.
It is. It is. So you've got some great information this week.
So yeah, we want to talk about a few things that are going on. There's a lot of people, we all want to make predictions, talk about what's going to happen. I wish we had a crystal ball, but we don't. And, the real estate market is unpredictable and changing quickly. There's a few assumptions that we can make based on numbers, and there are so many headlines and YouTube videos and all these things out there that are, they're going on explaining, oh, the market, we're in trouble, it's going to crash, all these terrible things where they're really, they're scaring people, and the headlines really are terrifying and not clarifying. I'm going to steal that from KCM.
There you go.
But you got to think about really, like, okay, here's the problem with many of these predictions is that they may a lot of them are excluding one or two very important data points, like super important. Today I watched a YouTube video that had thousands of views, and they used a lot of numbers to illustrate the point. And throughout the video, it was very interesting. He really had, his math dialed in and everything, but he never mentioned buyer demand or homeowner equity. And I think those two pieces are pretty important because, you think about it, the foundation of economics is the relationship between supply and demand. You can't analyze one without the other because they matter. And sure, our inventory has the potential for going up, but our demand is here to buy that properties. They are chomping at the bit for it. And and with the foreclosure moratorium lifting, we probably will see a significant number of homes coming on the market, but they'll be regular sales because of the amount of equity they have. And here's some numbers to kind of think about is 40% of residential properties in this country are owned free and clear. Of the ones that do have equity, about 57, or that, have a loan, 57% have at least 50% equity. I mean, these are big numbers. And then you think about in 2020 alone, homeowners gained $1.5 trillion in equity. Trillion. That's
crazy.
That's big. And, the one, there is that big kind of, a lot of people are concerned about, what's going to happen with inflation. A lot of people are very concerned what's going to happen. Now, one thing that a lot of people aren't really noticing is the fear that inflation is already here. It's happening right this minute already. It's not necessarily, I know the grocery store prices have gone up, and, with the canal blockage, some other things happen, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you really think about what, here's Logan Modashami at Housing Wire. He described inflation as a general economic rule of widespread inflation is caused by a shortage of goods and services, or in common vernacular, too many dollars chasing too few goods. So does that sound like housing?
Yes, it does.
Wow.
Supply and demand right there.
Yes. We have a severe supply and demand imbalance. Consumers call it appreciation. Economists call it inflation. So keep in mind, it's here, it's happening, and we're dealing with it. It doesn't mean that we're... Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not just here in our state, it's across the country in the housing industry. So
yes. Absolutely. Good point. Yeah. And it's everywhere. In some parts of the country have had more inflation than others. Here, inflation, appreciation, we've had like pushing 20%. I mean, these are really big numbers. It's why it's getting so much attention. And so when you think about that and then apply it to the forbearance numbers, and, the forbearance numbers, they increased, they improved again, not increased, but improved again. And now we actually dropped to our lowest number where we've been in a year, which is great. And we actually decreased from 5.5% of mortgages in a forbearance plan to 4.96%. right around 2.5 million borrowers. So, there's, I don't want to diminish it, but, keep in mind as these numbers go down, that's putting more and more healthy scenarios into our market and keeping people in their houses.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's a big, I mean, big thing we've been talking about. So if we look at by stage, the initial stage of forbearance plans, it was about 13.8% are, in that's actually down from 13.9 last week. And it's the lowest that it's seen in a year, which is good news. 83.4% are on extension, and that's down from 83.5% last week. The one number to really think about, though, 17% of that group, they've now hit the 12-month mark of being in forbearance. Now, with all the extensions, they have even up to 18 months, but that's something where the timelines are getting shorter on what they,
Right.
are going to have the availability to do.
Right.
The reentries was up slightly. It was 2.8% over last week's 2.6%. Of the exits, the forbearance plan exits from June 1st through March 21st, 41.7%. So it's a little bit down from last week, but 41.7% either continued to make their payment through the whole time they're in a forbearance plan, or exited and were caught up by the time they exited.
Right.
The group that we keep talking about, and it actually declined slightly last week, and it's the 14.1% of borrowers that are exiting with no forbearance plan or no loss mitigation plan, and they're still behind on their payments. So that's going to be the group that really does need help. That's the group to talk to. I'm going to share a link in here that really does talk a lot about different options that homeowners and struggling renters have. So that's a great resource for anybody who's looking. Now, Lydia and I were just talking about, well, what does that mean? We've got our process, we've got all this information. Well, what does that mean on, as we look at inventory, what's going to happen? And I know, Lydia, you've got some thoughts on that in regards to, foreclosures.
Yeah, so we were talking about this, and, for the servicing side of things, when I've talked to my servicing people, they have always said that they will act quickly and swiftly because they know they can get those properties back on the market, and they know that there is a demand. But let's go back to before the pandemic. There were about 250,000 people in foreclosure at that time, and then the pandemic hit and the moratorium was put in place, and those literally stopped at that point. So they're in all different stages of their forbearance. Now,
foreclosure,
foreclosure. So I talked to one of the servicing managers at my company a couple of weeks ago, and we were discussing this very scenario. What are those people going to do? Are we going to restart them and start them in a 90-day again? And they don't think that that's going to happen. We're not 100% sure, but they feel that wherever they stopped at in their foreclosure process is where they will start up again. And of course, as we get more data and information, we will definitely share that. But what that means is that if you were in day 60, you literally have 30 more days, and then you are going through that process of foreclosure. So it is something to be concerned about if you are in that situation. Now, from a year ago, equity has gone up. So what I see happening is hopefully those folks will maybe contact a real estate agent or someone like you and I, and we can tell them, if you can quickly get it on the market, you can get it sold and maybe even get out of that situation. So that'll be a good thing to kind of watch for as well. The other thing is just to let people kind of give you some idea as to, I hear a lot of headlines of the crash is coming, and so I'm getting a lot of people calling me up saying, when is this crash coming and what's going to happen? So here's the numbers that you and I talked about, Sarah, earlier today. Is right now, and these are just rough estimate numbers, and as we get more information and data, we will definitely share that with people. But borrowers in trouble on a rough estimate right now is about 500,000. When we were in the top part of our foreclosures 10, 12 years ago, we had 10 million people in foreclosures. So 500,000 versus 10 million, that's a big difference. And the numbers are not accurate because these forbearances are loan modifications that were never put through title like yourself. They were never recorded. So So the accuracy of the data is not, we're not 100% sure of that, just because it's not, you know, the situation 10, 12 years ago was people were getting into loans that they shouldn't have gotten into. And the loans were a little more, the lenders were a little more lax, where now it's all due to the pandemic, unless you were already in a foreclosure before the pandemic. So as we get more accurate information, because you and I are very picky on how much we want to make sure people have the most accurate information. And that's what I like about our segment here, is that we try to get all the information that everybody's talking about and sift through it to see what's actually accurate, what isn't. So, but those are the numbers, and it's hard to say what's going to happen, but we don't suspect it's going to be that big amount that's going to happen. But even if it does go in, even if someone does go into foreclosure, the servicing companies know that there is a supply and demand issue right now. So they know that once they can get those out on the market again, they will get snatched up very quickly. So.
And that's what they want. I mean, that's what everybody wants, is to,
Absolutely.
you know, you sell the property and, you know, kind of move on your way, make the best, you know, the most money you can, and everybody gets paid back.
Yep, exactly. And then they get taken off the books. So,
exactly.
But we'll definitely keep everybody posted on more accurate information as it comes up. So
definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, Lydia. It's always good to see you, and we'll talk again next week.
Okay, talk to you then. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.